Hi, I'm Baruch Gordon from beautiful Beit El and from this bustling Beit Midrash. In Parshat Shelach, the spies that were dispatched by Moshe to go tour the land came back and gave their report, slandering the land of Israel and telling the Jewish people, Lo nuchal la'alot, we can't enter the land. God immediately struck down the spies, and he decreed upon the entire nation of Israel that for the next 4 decades they would die out in wanderings in the desert, and only their children would merit to enter the land. But even then, part of the punishment of this transgression, which was considered so great, was saved to be meted out over the generations, over subsequent generations, until this very day. According to many, one of the greatest sages of the Jewish people over the last few centuries was the Vilna Gaon, also known as Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna. His top student who came to Israel was Rabbi Hillel from Shklov, and in his book Kol HaTorah, he sums up his teacher's teachings about the topic of the return of the Jewish people to the land. In chapter 5 there's a chapter called The Rectification of the Sin of the Spies. Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna writes, Taken b'ma shepagamta. In other words, in the very place where you transgressed, there you must rectify the sin. And since the transgression of the spies was swaying the entire nation not to enter the land of Israel, and on that very same day that the Jewish people believed them and cried, they cried all night. So on that very day, later in history, both temples were destroyed. The Vilna Gaon says that the rectification is to rebuild the temple. But he says we can't rebuild the temple unless first we rebuild the city of Jerusalem and purchase lands and promote Aliyah. Aliyah means the return of Jews to the land of Israel. The Vilna Gaon repeats again and again that the redemption doesn't happen all at once. Rather, it comes in stages, starting with the simple Aliyah of Jews, just like in Second Temple times with King Koresh. Some people say today, first the Mashiach will come and then we'll come to Israel with the Mashiach. The Gaon of Vilna brings source after source to disprove this claim. He says that no, first there has to be an itoruta dilatata, an awakening from grassroots level, with Jews coming back to Israel, and only then the Redeemer will come. The 12 spies, 10 of which slandered the land of Israel, they were the Torah rabbinical giants of the generation. They succumbed to these negative forces to convince the Jewish people not to come to the land of Israel. What I'm about to tell you, I'm not making up. These are the words of the Vilna Gaon. He says that in modern times too, it's extremely painful that great Torah scholars are caught up in the sin of the spies, convincing Jews, cooling down their enthusiasm, telling them not to come, and they're not aware in the least that they're caught up in this klipa, this spell of the spies. They back up their slander of Israel with all sorts of false accusations and baseless claims. These are the precise words of the Vilna Gaon. Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna goes on to list 17 ways to fulfill the verse, Harchivi makom oalech, expand the place of your tents. He says we must purchase lands in Israel. We must build buildings in Israel. We must build the Torah in Israel. He even says we must donate money to purchase lands, build buildings, and build the Torah in Israel. Interestingly, he quotes the prophet Yirmiyahu, who purchased land just before the expulsion of the Jews from the land, in order to show that when we return, this is precisely what we need to do. Today, Beit El Institutions is indeed right in the Binyamin region, and to donate money to purchase lands here, to build buildings here, to build the Torah here, is a fulfillment of that very prophecy, and of course, as the Gaon says, a rectification of the sin of the spies. I'd like to close with the words of the student, Rav Hillel Mishklov, about the passion that his rabbi, the Gaon of Vilna, had when he talked about these topics, and I quote, with flames accompanying his words, the Vilna Gaon urged his students to make Aliyah to Israel and to endeavor in bringing more Jews along. He begged his students to hasten the redemption by settling in the land of Israel. Almost every day he would speak to us, trembling and filled with excitement. He would quote the verse, in Zion and in Jerusalem there will be a refuge, and not to delay coming. Who can describe and who can capture in words the great concern of our teacher as he would impart these teachings to us with divine inspiration and tears in his eyes? There's much more in this chapter that I skipped over, but I'm going to call it quits here to let you come up for some air. So I hope that you were inspired by these words of the Gaon of Vilna. He gave us his personal guidance, his outlook, his understanding on how we today can rectify the sin of the spies and hasten the final redemption of our nation from exile. Shalom from Beit El.
I'll come back now. Here.